And on a tour that's favoured climbing over time trialling, even this second test against the clock is uphill. 32 kilometres setting out from Embrun and featuring 2 second category climbs of just over 1,100 metres. The summit of the Côte de Puissanière comes just 6.5 kilometres into the course. That's the first time check, and there's plenty of tricky descending before the climb of the Côte de Réan and the second check at 20 kilometres. There's actually another little kick up after the official summit, then it's a faster second descent to the finish at Chorges.
House now, Alberto Contador, Paul, there he is. We've seen his teammate go 3 minutes in front of him. They're separated by 3 seconds. They have a private battle on their hands now. Contador launches down into the streets of Embrun. Just 2 riders left to go in the Tour de France as they continue up the climb.
This man used to be one of the greatest time trialists. This is a time trial circuit, I think, built for Alberto Contador. 2 second category climbs, some tricky corners on the descents, and this is the time when he should be able to rival Bauke Mollema, the rider from Holland who sits in second place overall. Alberto Contador is only looking for 11 seconds over the Dutchman to move up 1 place in the overall standings.
The moment has come as Chris Froome, resplendent in the maillot jaune of the Tour de France, now takes his bike. He's warmed up, he's ready to go, and the world is looking at him now. Van Verde trying to be the best man at this point. The time of TJ is 39.47. It is going to be very, very close here as he's cheered all of the way. 6 seconds, it's counting down. I might say it might be reversed here. As he comes up, he is slowed down on this second. No, he gets it, boy, look at that. 59 hundredths of a second.
Very, very close indeed for Alejandro Valverde as we go back down to the... Whoa. Well, I tell you what...
was that a full minute? Oh, my goodness me, I was only looking at the seconds. It's a full minute for Valverde on the climb. As we now see out of the start house goes Bauke Mollema. Well, Valverde has pushed on there, and that surely now is going to be the best time. Once he comes up to the second check, he only has 12 kilometres, virtually downhill to the finishing line for Valverde. Still Perrault picking his way down.
Well, Phil, there's some incredible times being posted now, because going through the first time check, Joaquim Rodriguez has just gone through 3 seconds faster than Alejandro Valverde.
Well, if he builds like Valverde did on that second climb, the road, thankfully, is drying out for the crucial riders in the Tour de France. Chris Froome in the start house, a few deep breaths, and he's all set to go. Can he do what he did in Mont Saint-Michel and be the best of the men that matter in this year's Tour de France? Many of the people watching this from the roadside in Embrun are from Great Britain, as he moves off now and he slips into the top gears.
Phil, I'm not sure if you saw his face when he came out of that starting house. He wants to do something special, but Andy Schleck has done something very special in an individual time trial. Third. Fantastic.
He's pulled out something very special, Paul. You're so right. That is probably the best time trial I've ever seen Andy Schleck do. He's held on and he's third. Now he finishes down the road. Christopher Froome has just started and heads towards the finish line in Chorges. We're going to find out now if there's going to be a slight hiccup in the race for yellow in Paris or not. Chris Froome now continuing to tap out the rhythm. Quintana has gone through there at the top of this first climb. We're waiting for the arrival of Kreuziger, Contador, Mollema, and then Chris Froome in the first 6.5 kilometre check. And Contador dancing as he so often does, this style of climbing, always out of the saddle, getting his maximum. Michael Rogers out on course, coming up to the second point and continuing his great form in this year's Tour de France. Rogers going through, he needs a little bit of a way to go there, but nonetheless still putting in a good ride. He's in the same situation as Richie Porte, really, because he's in the race now to support 2 teammates at the moment. They're both behind him, of course. That's Roman Kreuziger and Alberto Contador.
Look at that time of Andy Schleck. That's the time. In fact, Michael Rogers has gone behind the time of Andy Schleck. That gives you a good reference that Schleck is finding some form in this last week of the Tour. We're now just on the back wheel of Nairo Quintana, who went through that time check with the 8th best time. Quintana knows how important this time trial is. He's got a good buffer in the Best Young Rider competition. He leads that by more than 2 minutes ahead of Michael Kwiatkowski, but Kwiatkowski has put in a very, very solid ride out on course. He was the 5th best rider at the first checkpoint.
The lonely job of a professional cyclist on the highway. Alberto Contador has gone through with the best time of 14 minutes 40. We did not see him go through, but he's just clocked the best time. Contador on fire.
Contador recording the best time. Is 20 seconds faster than his teammates, 17 seconds faster than Rodriguez, and 20 seconds faster than Alejandro Valverde. This is a race route built for that man.
And now the arrival of Alejandro Valverde. This will be a new best time here. Van Garderen stood for an awful long time today with his 53.24. The rainstorm came and went, and it was all gone and was dry for Valverde. This man has continued to progress all of the way to the line. What he's telling us, Paul, if only that broken wheel hadn't cost him 10 minutes, he would have still been a challenger in this year's Tour de France. He comes up to the line. He set the time now for everyone else to beat. Valverde hits the line, 52.03. This is Kwiatkowski here, who is now trying to set the best time in his private battle for the white jersey competition. Good ride too.
Well, 3rd best time for Kwiatkowski as he goes through that point, 1 minute and 1 second slower than Alejandro Valverde. Here is the bike change. Good place to do it, right in the corner there. Well, we just missed it, but he's been changed quickly there with his team manager up alongside him and pushed off on the descent. And here's the arrival of Cadel Evans. Well, things are not going right at all for Cadel, because he is actually going to go slower than Mark Cavendish on this individual time trial here this afternoon. Well, I don't think I've ever seen Cadel Evans ride an individual time trial like that for many, many years. There has to be something wrong with Evans as he comes up to the line. There's Samir Dumoulin from France, 151. This has not been the time trial that Evans wanted. 154th, and he's lost 7 minutes and 33 seconds. Mollema 2nd overall at the start of the day, but he only has a 11-second advantage over Alberto Contador, and he goes through the 2nd category climb there. So very shortly, that's the summit of the climb, and this is the time check. Well, time to beat is the time of Alberto Contador, 14:40. Well, he's actually lost quite a bit of time there, Mollema.
Well, Bauke Mollema has just gone through that check in only 19th position, Paul. 15:47.
More importantly is the time gap, Phil. 1:07 lost at this point, and that means that he's going to go down into 3rd place overall, because Alberto Contador has gone faster than him at that point.
Contador looking to get up into the top 3 podium finish. He started the day 3rd place overall. He's a very good time trial rider.
At the first time check, Contador, Rodriguez and Valverde. 14:40 for Alberto Contador on a course that I think is perfectly suited to the Spaniard's abilities. Brilliant climber. We saw the accelerations that he made on the road to Gap, and we saw how well he attacked the descent. He really took a lot of risks, and he's on his own here. He's not going to put anybody else into danger except for himself, and so he can attack these corners as hard as he likes. As we now get a chance to see number 101, Joaquim Rodriguez, 2nd at the first time check. Using the big gear now he's changed it down into the small chainring, Rodriguez. He too is looking to climb higher up on a day like today. Well, Chris Froome has gone through there with the 2nd best time. He's 2 seconds slower than Alberto Contador and 15 seconds faster than Joaquim Rodriguez. So Chris Froome has gone through checkpoint number 1 with the 2nd fastest time. Kreuziger has the 5th fastest time at that point. As we come up, Daniel Navarro, 11th time for him, 2 minutes and 19 seconds back.
So as we watch Chris Froome, Paul, I don't think he's going to worry too much about approximately 2 seconds behind Alberto Contador at the top.
Well, bear in mind, Phil, he starts the day with a very serious buffer of 4 minutes and 25 seconds, and this is a long time trial. We've seen how much time has been made up in the last third of the race as we go back to Perrault.
Look at Perrault, this man riding with a fractured clavicle, heading up. He's still in amongst it. He said he'd make a decision after the first climb whether to continue in the Tour de France. Clearly decided to continue. Now he's coming up to the top of the second climb here, and he's still doing the ride of his life considering the pain he is in. He's trying to maintain his 9th place overall as the top Frenchman in this year's Tour de France. 13th place, amazingly, unlucky for some as he goes over the top.
This is the arrival now of Andrew Talansky.
Talansky sits in 13th place overall in the Tour de France. Has he got a chance of closing up? It's a long journey up to Michael Rogers, but has he starting it now? As he comes up, he's challenging second place of TJ Van Gogh, and this has been a great time for him. If he can put in a good finishing spurt here, he will slot in second place. The Garmin Sharp American from Miami hits the line, goes second for the moment. 53.14 for Andrew Talansky. Now the former junior world champion Kwiatkowski coming up to the line here in a private battle for the white jersey with Quintana, as Kwiatkowski now comes up to the line. The former junior world champion has been strong ever since day one of this Tour de France, and it's not changed today. Second.
24 years of age, and he is riding for the white jersey competition. He wants to try and pull back some time on the Colombian climber Nairo Quintana, but he started the day more than 2 minutes behind him in the overall standings.
We're watching Alberto Contador, who's reportedly moving ahead of Chris Froome on the road.
Well, it all depends how Chris Froome handles the next climb of the day. The next climb is a slightly easier climb, a slightly easier gradient. The steeper gradient of the first climb of the day probably went to the advantage of Alberto Contador, but Alberto Contador, Phil, I am certain has been taking massive risks on the descent, which probably Chris Froome will not do.
Bauke Mollema, I think this might be the man who's going to lose a little bit of high standing on the Tour de France. He was in second place at the start of the day. Contador is eating up the road and pushing him back at least 1 place.
This man is going to battle over the next 3 stages once we get into the big alpine passes, because he has the ability to pull himself up into a podium position. That's something that he certainly wants to do, and if he can, he will try and put a little bit of pressure onto the shoulders of the men from Belkin.
The bearded Laurens ten Dam, the other man who was right up amongst it, 6th overall at the start of the day. This is the second checkpoint, where Talansky was 8th here, and he's now sitting 2nd at the finish. Ten Dam not too far off the time of Talansky. He's only seconds in it. He's getting better as the race gets longer.
Yes, he is, and you can see that he stopped the clock there in the 11th best time. He's lost 1 minute and 41 seconds to Joaquim Rodriguez at that point. Rodriguez moving further and further up in the overall standings tonight. Well, Rodriguez has gone through that second time check with the fastest time, but he was bettered at the first time check by Chris Froome and Alberto Contador. Alberto Contador, according to Race Radio, has pulled back 20 seconds on Chris Froome at the bottom of the first climb of the day there.
Look at his face now on Nairo Quintana here. He's not going to be the best time of this second check, but he is pulling up time all of the way here. As he continues to dance up this hill now, he's up amongst it. He's looking at the time of TJ Van Gogh, who for a long time was best time at the finish. And he's still got a few seconds, so he's going to go through in 3rd place. Is there a bike change coming?
There is. I've just seen the car door open. The mechanic's getting ready for it already. So as he comes round the corner, look at the mechanic. They're trying to make this change as quick as possible. The mechanic is out, flicks the quick release on the bike, straight up to the rider. That is probably, Phil, the quickest change I've seen all afternoon.
And at last the mechanics are getting to understand this time trial, because they've been pretty slow all day, but not now. They were ready for that one. He's got his bike, and Quintana is looking for the top time now.
Well, the sad thing that will go against him, Phil, is probably the lightest rider in the last 10 riders coming down this descent, and he won't have that advantage of the weight on the descent.
Watching Alberto Contador here as he heads up towards the check, and it will be a very interesting check. It's still currently Rodriguez, Valverde, Quintana in third place, and Van Garderen, who was originally fastest, down to fourth.
Well, at the first time check, Phil, Kwiatkowski was faster than Quintana, but over the second climb of the day, Quintana took advantage of that long climb to pull himself back into this race, and he's gone through that second time check with the third best time.
Yeah, and Rodriguez still best time there, but I think we're going to see that dislodge when Contador gets there, and then we'll have to check. Has Chris Froome continued to lose time on Contador? He was 2 seconds back at the first check, or has he recovered a little bit?
Well, he keeps putting his head down. The reason he puts his head down like that every now and again, because this is something that he would have learned to do in a wind tunnel. That makes him just a little bit more aerodynamic. It brings the head down slightly more and allows him to use that aerodynamics. Normally, aerodynamics is not that important when you're going uphill because you're only going uphill at lower speeds. The higher speeds is where the aerodynamics really comes in.
And Bauke Mollema here is really having a tough ride, unaware of what everybody is doing to him out on the course. He's losing time today, and he's probably losing a podium finish in Paris at this moment. Roman Kreuziger is coming up the hill here now and heading up towards point 2. He's challenging the time of Rodriguez. He has another man who has accelerated on the second part of the course.
Well, don't forget, a couple of years ago, Phil, when he won the Tour of Switzerland, he won it by using the mountain time trial. It was a mountaintop time trial on that occasion, and it was right down towards the end of the race. He has ridden a very good middle section of the course.
Just slipping away from the leaderboard, from the lead on the board, but still slotting in second place now. Kreuziger, these boys at the end are really turning on the style now, and the only man missing out, I'm sorry to say, is Bauke Mollema.
Phil, I'm just hearing over race radio that Jean-Claude Perrault has crashed at 2 kilometres to go to the finish. That on top of the crash that he had this morning in a warm-up.
Now, this morning he fell. He has a fractured right clavicule. And if he's fallen again on the same side, well, what can you say? Back at the finish line now, as Jakob Fuglsang makes his approach to the line. I think we're going to see a great time off Jakob Fuglsang today.
He's not going to rival the time there of Kwiatkowski, but third place for him.
Just third place there as he hits the line for Fuglsang. He looks back at the finishing line. He is a man who has promised a high finish in Paris, but we're waiting for Contador on the climb now. Here he is, as he's looking at the best time of 38.30. It's going to be close, but that's the time check as he comes up the hill here. He's going to hit the line. He's going to get the best time by just 6 seconds. 38.24 for Contador. Well, what can Froome do about that?
Well, he is actually, according to race radio, Froome has pulled back 5 seconds on Alberto Contador. Froome is now 15 seconds behind Contador on the open road.
Alberto Contador has refound himself. He said he gets better as the tour gets longer. This was a time trial where he was free to fly and at least consolidate himself as the second best rider in this year's Tour de France. We switch back to Rodriguez here now. He's not far from home. This has been a tremendous ride by Rodriguez. He's promised himself a podium in Paris. Well, he's taken another step up the ladder towards that. Rodriguez drives on now. The 52.03 of Valverde will be well beaten by Rodriguez as he comes off up towards the finishing line now. Joaquim Rodriguez is going to set the best time for the moment, 51.43. Head down, eyes up, and he's looking now. Chris Froome is aiming only at Alberto Contador, 38.24. He'll be very close, you know. I think this man is recovering and the bike is ready for him. Is he going to change? As he heads up towards the top of the mountain comes first, and this is where they've decided.
Look at the door. The door is open. The mechanic's ready.
Before the top of the climb, Paul, they agreed this point was the best place to change.
No panic on board, and look at this. He's up there. The mechanic is pushing away very, very quickly. He's actually taking the advantage. It's actually quite clever because he's taking the advantage of getting a little bit of a push on the incline as he goes through up the clock.
Well, they believed that that was the best place to change the bike, but of course the clock has not stopped. So he's now gone over the top, 11 seconds off Alberto Contador.
But that is including the bike change. He was 15 seconds behind Alberto Contador a little while ago, while we go down to Laurens ten Dam in the finishing straight.
And Laurens ten Dam, I think, has done a pretty good time trial. This man is living a dream in the Tour de France this year. We've seen him many times. He's never ridden like this. As Laurens ten Dam has just turned in so far the 11th best time, 54.02.
But Phil, look at that, from 1st to 10th place, you're looking at almost 2 minutes, the time difference. The time gaps are really starting to open in the Tour de France, and this was still 3 mountain stages to come.
Chris Froome gambled a little bit. It cost him time at the time check, but now he's on his best bike and he's free to fly down this mountain and head into the finishing line. We'll see what deficit stands like at the bottom of the line. He's currently 11 seconds slower than Contador.
But this is the fastest part of the course, and this is where he'll take advantage. And you see, we're looking here, Contador has decided to stay on his normal bike. He didn't switch to the low-profile aerodynamic bike, and Chris Froome will actually take an advantage from that.
Well, he has put on those clip-on bars so he can tuck in nicely, and that was his choice coming down. Quintana arrives. Now this is going to be an interesting time. He continues. He's the time of the man who races him for the white jersey. Kwiatkowski is sitting in 3rd place. He's got plenty of time on his side after a great ride yesterday, Quintana. But you know, this man is pulling out something special in a mountain time trial, and goodness knows what he'll do in the Alps tomorrow when we go to Alpe d'Huez. This is a tremendous ride by this youngster. He's beaten Kwiatkowski. He slots in 3rd, 52.44.
I am not at all surprised by the performance of this man Quintana this afternoon. This time trial course is pretty much suited to his abilities. He has proven to us that it is a great time trial. This.
Oh, that was crashed on the right hand
replay.
bend.
That's a replay, Phil. Sorry about that.
Oh.
That was the crash of Perrault a little earlier.
Oh, goodness me. We switched to... This is when there was a little bit of rain on the camera, and I don't believe it, Paul, because he has fallen on the exact same side and clouted that broken collarbone.
Yeah, that was very, very tough for Perrault. It was nice of the French television to throw that one at us.
They found the pictures at least. That's all that matters, and what horrible pictures they were. Well, Christophe Perrault, a crash on a right-hand bend. It's still a little bit slippy from dampness of the road surface. But goodness me, you cringe with the pain that man must be going through. Now let's see what Kreuzer can do as he comes up. There's the time of Rodriguez at 51.43. As Kreuzer can see the clock now, he's got a few seconds to do it, but I don't know whether he's going to quite get there.
Well, it's going to be a long, hard pull up to the line, but one thing we can say, he'll be pulling himself up into a podium position at the end of today's stage.
Well, of course, Rodriguez wanted to close time on this man. He's closed a few seconds as we look at Valverde's time. Kreuziger is going to slot in 2nd place here. He's getting the last drain of energy out of those legs. 2nd for the moment, 51.56. A great ride.
That's going to be enough to move him up probably into 3rd place in the overall standings tonight, depending on the performance of his own teammate Alberto Contador behind him, because at the 2nd time check he was only 9 seconds behind Contador at that point. So it's really down to who finishes off the best.
Now the situation with everybody through at the last check of the day. The order is Contador, Rodriguez, Kreuziger, Froome, Valverde. Well, he's done it at the 2 checks over Rodriguez. He was just 6 seconds quicker with 12 kilometers to go. Has he come off the mountains better? Has he kept the rhythm up on terrain not so suitable, perhaps, to Contador? It's going to be tight. The best time is still Joaquim Rodriguez at 51.43. Contador still out of the saddle. He must spend half of his time trial out of the saddle, but he wants time today, and he wants time primarily over Chris Froome as we go into the last 3 major days in the Alps before we ride to Paris. Contador driving home.
Well, it's going to be very, very close on the line. He's inside the last 100 metres. You can see the finishing line gantry right now as he digs and digs deeper.
Oh, he's going to do it. It's going to be very, very close. 51.43. He's coming up to the line. He gets it, by goodness me. 72 hundredths of a second to the good. That will be rounded out to 1 second quicker than Rodriguez. So Rodriguez came down that mountain quicker than Alberto Contador did. Now, will Chris Froome do the same?
Well, that's the important thing. Froome has taken the option, Phil, at the top of that last climb of the day to go onto the aerodynamic bike, and I think that's going to give him a slight advantage. Just look at this, Phil. There's another little cloud burst now, which may well go against Froome here this afternoon, because he's starting to pick up a little bit of dampness on the road.
Yes, very, very dangerous indeed, and Chris Froome has got time in the bank, and that's what he needs to think about. No silly risks down here, and do what Jean-Christophe Perrault has done, and that's fall on a right-hand bend. Oh, Bauke Mollema has crashed. He's
Same
crashed
corner.
as the camera's picked him up, the same corner.
Well, it's
What's
the
this?
same corner. Actually, that was his own fault, Phil. He was going too fast in that corner, and he didn't have enough space left to actually correct it.
He did well to not fall off there. The crowd were wise to step back. He comes up the straight here. Bauke Mollema's big defence of a high finish in Paris, I think, has gone today.
Well, the yellow jersey has just gone under the red kite, so he's only a minute away from the finishing line, Chris Froome.
And Mollema comes home here now, still looking at 10th place. He hits the line, he gets 10th place, exactly 2 minutes off the time of Contador. 53.42, and expect to see the yellow jersey in his gun sights now.
Well, it's all about the time now of 51.42. That is the time that Chris Froome is aiming for. He's inside of the final kilometre. Alberto Contador is not far away from the finishing line. He's looking down at the televisions to see whether or not he's going to win this stage here this afternoon, as Froome continues to put his head down to get that little bit more aerodynamic at the front end. And now he can pretty much see the finishing line around the corner. It's going to be so very, very close.
He'll pick his head up, he'll see the banner. 51.42, 19, 18, 17. The seconds tick away. Has he reversed an 11-second deficit? I think he has. He's 12, 11, 10. It is 9 seconds, 8 seconds. It'll be now 9 seconds for Chris Froome. He has gone the best time of the day. The face of Alberto Contador. He gave it his best shot, and Chris Froome has just given it a better shot. Chris Froome now wins his third stage of the Tour de France, and this is a time trial.
Yep, 2 summit finishes and 1 individual time trial is the stage win count now for Chris Froome. Alejandro Valverde was among the first to congratulate him. Alberto Contador acknowledged the result with a small shake of the head, and if he was like the rest of us, immediately thought back to what was probably the deciding moment or pair of moments in the stage. Chris Froome's change to a time trial bike for the fast run in, and his to keep going past the same spot on the bike he'd started on.
No, la verdad que no, estoy súper contento con la elección que he hecho y la verdad que creo que ha sido la más acertada.
The result of the bike change for Chris Froome was a 20-second swing from being 11 seconds down at the 20-kilometre check to 9 seconds up at the line. Joaquim Rodriguez was a rounded up second behind Contador in third place. Then came Kreuziger, Valverde, all within half a minute. Nairo Quintana conceded a minute 11, but still took 22 seconds off his white jersey rival Michał Kwiatkowski. Jakob Fuglsang was 8th at a minute 34. Andrew Talansky took US honours ahead of TJ Van Garderen on the stage, but the big loser was Bauke Mollema, losing 2 minutes 9 seconds and his place on the podium. But at least he's still in the race. He hit the barriers on the same bend that Jean-Christophe Perrault suffered his second crash of the day. He rolled down the start ramp with a collarbone fracture and landed horribly hard on the same side. His tour is over. Chris Froome's must seem never-ending once the podium protocol begins. Once again, he made multiple appearances as stage winner, King of the Mountains leader, and leader of the race overall.
I couldn't believe it when I got over the line and saw I had the fastest time there. That was, I went into today thinking I'm going to try and sort of limit my losses, thinking about the days to come now. So to go through the finish line with the fastest time, I really didn't see that coming.
So many factors come into play, not only the equipment that you choose, but also the weather. And for a while, it looked like that might really disrupt you, GC boys.
Yeah, I really didn't think the weather was going in my direction. I had a bit of rain on the second descent, but luckily the first one had dried up by the time I got there. So I was really happy with that.
Very tight between you and Alberto Contador. Ultimately, do you think that bike change tactic of yours worked? He did not change bike. I mean, was that the difference possibly?
That very well could have been the difference. I found, for me personally, when I rode the route this morning, I felt that I needed the bigger gearing for this descent, and the run-in was really fast, so I made sure on the second bike I had bigger gears to be able to push that coming into the final there.
So here's what the time trial has done to the top of the standings. Instead of the 4-minute 14-second lead he had over Bauke Mollema this morning, Chris Froome's advantage is 4 minutes 34 over Alberto Contador. He's up to second, his teammate Roman Kreuziger to third, and Bauke Mollema has dropped to fourth, 6 minutes 23 down. His lead over Nairo Quintana in fifth place is 35 seconds. Joaquin Rodriguez moves up to sixth at 7 minutes 21, Lawrence 10 down slips to seventh at 8.23, and Jakob Fuglsang 8th at 8.56. Now, as well as being fifth overall, Quintana looks to have the white jersey of best young rider in the bag. He finished ahead of Michał Kwiatkowski today, and with 3 big mountain stages to come, it's likely that Kwiatkowski, currently 9th, will slip even further behind. He's currently at 11.10, 1 place ahead of Daniel Martin. With the departure of Jean-Christophe Perrault, the best placed home rider in the Tour de France is Romain Bardet in 20th.